Okay, my name is Florentino-Gregorio. I'm afraid I might be the only judge in the room, but these things we are talking about of probation and alternative measures and so on and so forth are all in all run by judges. So the views from the judiciary are quite important. What I'm trying to say is we judges, at least in Spain, we are missing lots of things. Because probation is a thing, is not that simple. We are going to start by thinking a bit about what probation is, but because the very term is confusing. We have borrowed it from the United Kingdom, and we are facing that what we call probation in England has little, if anything, to do what we may call probation in Spain. And later on, we are going to see who are the stakeholders of probation and who they should interrelate between them. What I was trying to close is by saying that we in Spain are a bit lagged behind in this matter. We have a new Victims Act dating back from April last year, so we need to catch up with the rest of the continent. And in my view, I hope there aren't any Britons here because I hate flattering them. In my view, Britons are almost the best dealing with this sort of things. They are way ahead. If you go to the recommendation of European probation rules and we check what they do in England and Wales, they are very close to the ideal. Whereas in Spain, we are years behind, at least. So, as I have mentioned, the word probation, we need to think, what are we talking about? Probation, what is probation? A suspended sentence, a person with an early release, and a person who has been released on parole, a person who is doing community works. Everything of that can be probation. If you go to the third definition, is the best, of course, because it's the definition from the European probation rules. The first one is mine with a single aim to have a reference here. To me, probation is everything that frees the person from going to prison, preventing the person from going to prison. Let's assume it's not correct, it's not perfect, but I will say that. And the second one is a very nice definition from a state, Vermont in the United States. They are working with a thing I'm very happy to comment a bit later on, which is restorative probation, which is a further step of the concept of probation and alternative measures. So we have a complicated term here. I used to work in international cooperation, and there is a framework decision 947, and it's very problematic to circulate ideas regarding this framework decision because what we call probation in every country is not the same. Who are the actors of this film of probation? Who are these stakeholders? With this society, you've said, all of you have mentioned that, the offender, the police, the judiciary, the probation agencies, and victim support organizations. What I think is more important I like to say is that victims shall be regarded as a part of the probation mechanism. Whether or not they are happy to engage is up to them, but they have to be offered the opportunity to join in the probation scheme. If they're okay, if that is okay with them, they should have the opportunity to fit in, to join in, and to be heard throughout the proceedings and working of probation schemes. And the other thing is the judiciary. I've been working as a judge for 24 years. In Spain, we have a very weird system allowing people to become a judge at the age of 20, late 25, what was my case. It's not very sensible, but it was like that. So I've been sending people to prison for years. I actually work as appeal judge in criminal matters. I've been suspending sentences. I've been doing a lot of things, but I have to admit that we do that in a way a bit, I say, routine. As if we were working in a factory. This guy has previous records. No, he's not going to go to prison. This is a re-offender. He's going to go to prison. And never ever have had a discussion with my colleagues of bench when victims are mentioned regarding suspension or not. Never ever we have paid attention to the victim's position. Never ever. We have a brand new instrument, that act from 2015, but still we need to be witty, we need to be creative, we need to use our imagination to make through our way in Spain, because we don't have the instruments they do have in England. Sorry for mentioning them again, because it's the country I knew slightly in detail. So the actors, the stakeholders, and we have that nice instrument, because the other I've mentioned before, I'm going to mention right again, is soft law. It's a recommendation, but this is a real law. Law is a directive that tell us a number of things. Well, we can summarize it. The victims need to be heard, and their views we need to pay attention to what they may feel, or what they are happy to say, or if they say, I don't want to know a thing about probation, or forget me and pass the sentence that is suitable according to the law, and forget me, and I'm not interested in going in detail. The recommendation says a number of things which are interesting, because I started by saying that probation is any measure preventing a guy to going to prison. Well, you can say probation and pre-trial prison are compatible terms, or probation and suspension of a sentence without any condition other than not reoffend, and so on. But if you go to the recommendation of the year 2010, you are going to see what the recommendation says. What are the probation tasks? What is the probation work? And the first thing they do is to recommend that pre-sentence reports is one of the tasks of the probation system. If you go to the United Kingdom and you go to a trial there, most probably you're going to find the judge asking the probation officer for a pre-sentence report. Yes, you tell me what I'm likely to do with this guy, what he's likely to do, is he reliable, is he a drug addict, what is the links with the area, with the family, is he a good guy, has committed an error, a single error, and so forth. So don't think that probation is only a thing for the enforcement stage of the crime. No, it's a thing that may work all the time, because one of the things that the recommendation reminds us is restorative justice and crime prevention is related to the probation work. So yet again, restorative justice may apply as an alternative to the judicial track, or may apply as a way of performing the very probation system. If you see, I've highlighted in yellow that victims are an important part of the probation works. We need to liaise with the victim support service and probation service and assist them in dealing with the consequences of crime. Those things, I've started by saying that. In Spain, we don't pay much attention to that. In Spain, what we may call probation is a thing completely separated from the victim's points of view. There are some areas where they can't overlap the victim's interest and probation working, but very, very reduced. We need to broaden that, we need to widen our understanding of probation, and we need to start using some of the instruments the new legislation offers us. So let's move. Sorry, but I had a flu last week, and I'm not very happy with my throat. So what should we expect from the probation system? You have been mentioned a series of nice and reassuring statistics, studies, and so on. But I've been looking a lot on the net, and I'm not that optimistic as for the efficiency of probation in reducing recidivism and reoffending rates. I've seen that the reoffending rate is something about, I don't know, I'm not sure, but something about 40, 45, or yes, fluctuating in that. And the reoffending rate, according to that probation service recidivism study, you have a link there. I'm going to leave my presentation and the supporting materials for Libra for you to disseminate if you like. If you click them, around 37% of the people under a probation scheme do reoffend. So the reoffending rate is quite important. You can see the same in the figures. The most updated one we have from Spain is where you've taken your presentation graphics and so on from the year 2014. In Spain, we do have more or less the same rates. It varies a little depending on the person has been doing community work or standard probation, but fluctuating around 37, 35. It's a high rate of reoffending. So it's not the thing we are going to resort to probation and everything is fixed and the people do not reoffend and so on. There is a series of factors that you cannot avoid by using probation track. It's the gender, the age, the social background, the drug addiction problems. It's very difficult to tackle if you don't put into force a really solid scheme of probation. But if we talk about reparative probation, I've seen studies from Ireland and that study from Vermont University, and they are very happy. If you go down to the bottom of the slide, they have found in Vermont that restorative probation reduces recidivism by 23% and by 12%, depending on the cases. Is a reduction tax that operates if you compare standard probation with restorative probation. That doesn't compare standard, let's say, standard recidivism with probation, restorative probation recidivism. But there is a very interesting thing. If you remember, I've just quoted the recommendation of European probation rules, and the recommendation says one of the things probation is about is restorative justice. We do have restorative probation in not many countries in Europe. I think there are serious schemes dealing with that kind of probation. In Spain, as far as I know, I would say 90% of the judiciary are not familiar with this kind of probation and with this possibilities, so I'm not very optimistic regarding this. Never heard about that being put into force in Spain, but we do have that as an alternative to the alternative to send people to clink, which is the probation, standard probation. This is an alternative to standard probation. What they have found, they are very down to earth and very straight and very reliable people. They've said, well, the bad news is victims are not very much into getting into restorative probation schemes. Only 1 out of 10 victims is in favor of engaging in such a scheme, but victims are happy knowing that if they would have liked, they would have had the opportunity to join in this scheme, and the operation is more or less the same as a traditional restorative justice, to have a meeting, to offer first to the perpetrator if they're happy to engage, later to the victim, to decide to apologies, to how to compensate, how to perform community work related to the crime committed, and so on. But this is a nice alternative. I thought it was worthwhile to mention. Let's say a bit comparing our two countries, the United Kingdom and Spain. What they do in the United Kingdom is, first of all, having a victim contact scheme, which is a guidance document of 270 or more pages, when you can find a complete guidance of what probation is regarding victims. And you can find there that probation services and probation officers are obliged to get in touch with the victims for some eligible crimes, not all victims of crimes, because fortunately enough, there are a lot of crimes that are not serious enough to deserve to have all this working. But for serious crimes, they have to get in touch with the victim liaison officer, the probation trust with the victim liaison officer, and the victim liaison officer send a letter to the victims. Well, Mr. So-and-so, the situation is like this, the parole board is likely to meet that day. If we were happy to have an interview with you, to know your views about this, about that. Are you happy meeting with us? You don't need to be disturbed at all. What are your feelings? You can make representations that are going to be assessed and taken into account regarding the early release of this guy. You can take for sure that we are not going to release that guy unless we are safe and sure that he's not going to reoffend, he's not going to disturb you. So they provide legal information, lots, and they provide personal reassuring to the victims. This is very important. And this is, in England, they do this all the time. There is very in detail written, very in detail structured, and you can go and find, everything is on the net, and you can go and find information galore regarding this. So I find what they do is very, very close to what the recommendation says. So it's good for them. So in Spain, on the other hand, we have a law, an act on victims. Oh, grazie, thank you very much. Just from April last year. Before this, we have a series of acts and regulations telling us that we need to compensate victims when they suffer the crime. We need to pay them for the damages suffered, for a number of concepts. But we don't have such integrated text until April this year. It's a modern law. It's not too bad, but it's still lacking a number of things. is still lacking to be developed via law, for instance, because for the first time in Spain, we have found, except for the juvenile, the word mediation in a legal text. Before this, we cannot go purely to mediation because it was not contemplated in our texts. This is for the first time that says, well, you can go to the mediation track, but we need to develop by law, because I cannot send people to mediation avoiding that way the judicial track today. You can correct me, there has been pilot experience and so on, but without legal support allowing us to do that straightforward and according to the law. So what's our law say? Well, let's going to informate the victim and pay information to them and so on. But the way Spanish law thinks about the victim is the victim can challenge a number of decisions regarding the situation of the perpetrator in prison. But this is, I think this is a sort of aggressive approach. You know? You can challenge, you can put your position and your own stance in front of what we have already decided. Because to challenge means that you can go on appeal as a reaction against a decision, a judicial decision saying, well, this guy is going to be sent out of prison, is going to be released on parole. Well, you can challenge that. It's a counteract, it's an aggressive reaction for a person that is not actually on an equal footing. The equal footing is, we're going to talk to you, to listen to what you have to tell us, and later on, and additionally, and further to that, you are entitled to challenge an appeal against a decision if you're not happy with that. This is complicated. I'm going to touch it a bit more in detail tomorrow if I had the time, but that sort of provision has expanded the position of the victim, because victims, even though they are not a civil party, a party to the criminal proceedings, are entitled to challenge those decisions. And on the other hand, the information set is not as comprehensive as it should be. And but last thing I would like to say, because I know you are very tired and you've been very interested in this long session. The last thing I wanted to say is the way we work in Spain so far is when the penitentiary civilian judge, this is a very strange figure, but you do have this in Italy as well, but in most countries they don't have. But you're familiar with this in Italy. When the penitentiary civilian judge is thinking about granting parole to an inmate, or to granting a person a third degree or an early release or whatever, they do have social workers to assist them. Very few, that's the truth, very overwhelmed with workload and work paper and so on, but they do have. On the other hand, if we judges, before passing a sentence, or when we are deciding whether or not to suspend a sentence, or whether or not sending a person to pretrial custody, or confirm or quash a decision from a lower court regarding pretrial custody, we don't have such social workers. We used to have social workers attached to the courts, but the lawmakers or the administration decided that centralizing social workers to the enforcement stage, this is to say very close to the penitentiary civilian judge, was more effective. was cost-reducing tool, of course. But when I started to work as an appeal judge 13 years ago, I've been sitting at the higher level for 13 years now, we do have social workers, and we used to call them every now and then. Come here, what about this guy? Well, Your Honor, if you give me 2 days, I'm going to that neighborhood, a very depressed area. I'm going to talk with this and that. I'm going to do some researches for you. If we trust that guy, what's your view? Well, if Your Honor allows me, I'm going to talk with this and that, with the detoxification center, with the priest of the area, well, whenever the person is. And they were very useful for us. Nowadays, we don't have such a, well, in theory, we can resort to the social workers attached to the penitentiary services, but this is a cumbersome, long track. And as we stated at the beginning of my intervention, we operate this most of the time, I need to admit, as if we were working in a factory. And we're not working in a factory, we're not screwing bolts and so on. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.